A cat detected stage 1 pancreatic cancer 9 years after being found frozen on a mountain, where the temperature was -42 degrees. 9 years after surviving alone at 14,000 feet where nothing grows and nothing lives. The doctors had no explanation for how this animal knew. Medical imaging had shown nothing. Blood work was normal. The woman felt perfectly healthy, but the cat refused to stop, kept pawing at one specific spot on her abdomen, kept waking her up at night, kept staring at her with desperate intensity, until finally she got screened, and they found it. Early enough to treat, early enough to survive. Subscribe right now and turn on notifications, because what you are about to hear will change how you think about animal intelligence and the invisible ways animals save human lives every single day. This is the story of Jackson Rivera, an Army Ranger who destroyed his military career to save a kitten. This is the story of Sarah Rivera, a teacher who trusted a cat more than she trusted her doctors. This is the story of Frost, who survived the impossible and repaid that survival by saving the person who mattered most. Before we continue, smash that like button and drop a comment telling me where you are watching from. What city and country? February 2014. Ktten Province, Afghanistan. Jackson Rivera was 26 years old and conducting mountain reconnaissance operations with his ranger unit along the Pakistani border. These mountains were called the Dead Mountains by locals because winter killed everything that tried to survive there. Jackson's mission was simple: move fast through hostile terrain, gather intelligence on enemy positions, maintain absolute mission discipline, no deviations, no distractions. Rangers are elite light infantry trained for extreme conditions. Jackson had trained for years to earn his place in this unit. He took orders seriously. He followed protocol exactly, until he found something at 14,000 feet that changed everything. The temperature was -42 degrees. Wind chill made it colder. His team was moving through a narrow pass when Jackson saw movement in the rocks. Small, rhythmic, wrong pattern for human. His team leader told him to investigate quickly. Jackson approached with weapon ready. What he found made no biological sense. A kitten, white fur with gray stripes, maybe 8 weeks old, shaking violently, eyes frozen partially shut. This animal should have been dead hours ago. Kittens cannot regulate body temperature effectively. At -42 degrees, death comes fast. But this kitten was alive, barely, fighting to survive. Jackson picked up the kitten and placed it inside his jacket against his chest. The cold coming off that small body was shocking, like holding ice. He radioed his team leader and said he found a cat. The radio went silent. Then team leader asked if this was a joke. Jackson said negative. Team leader ordered him to leave it and return to formation immediately. They had mission objectives. They were not running animal rescue. Jackson looked at the kitten pressed against his chest, made a decision that would cost him everything. He told team leader he was bringing it. Team leader repeated the order. Leave it. Jackson refused, then clicked off his radio and walked back to his team. Military disobedience is serious. Rangers operate on absolute discipline. Jackson had just refused a direct order in a combat zone. His team leader could file charges. Failure to obey orders. Jackson could lose rank, face punishment, destroy his career. When he rejoined his team leader stared at him, asked if Jackson understood what he just did. Jackson said yes. Team leader asked if one cat was worth his career. Jackson did not answer, just asked permission to continue mission. Team leader stared for a long moment, then told him to move out and keep that animal silent. Jackson carried the kitten for 8 hours, 16 miles of difficult terrain. The animal stayed completely silent except for faint purring Jackson could feel against his chest. That purring meant the kitten was warming up, meant he was surviving. When they returned to base, Jackson went directly to his tent, fed the kitten small pieces of his emergency rations, gave him water melted from snow, made a bed from a spare shirt. The kitten climbed into it and immediately fell asleep. Jackson sat watching this impossible survivor breathe and wondered what he had just done. His team leader entered the tent an hour later. Jackson expected consequences. Instead, team leader said his sister ran an animal rescue in Colorado. If Jackson kept the cat alive until they rotated back, Team leader would help arrange transport to the States. But there would be paperwork. There would be an official reprimand. Jackson would face punishment for refusing that order. Jackson said he understood. Asked why team leader was helping. Team leader said 20 years ago he left a dog behind in Somalia. Still thought about it every day. Keeping a cat on a military base was against regulations. Jackson hid the kitten in his personal gear, fed him portions of his own meals, kept him quiet during inspections, named him Frost because of where he found him and because his coloring looked like frozen ground. Other rangers knew. Nobody reported it. There is an unwritten code. You do not report the small things that keep people sane. Frost grew stronger, started playing, started making small sounds Jackson had to constantly quiet. The cat developed personality, playful, curious, fearless. News of Jackson's order refusal reached his battalion commander. Jackson was called to explain his actions. The meeting lasted 15 minutes. Commander asked Jackson to explain. Jackson told the story, found the kitten, made the choice, refused the order. Commander listened without interruption, then told Jackson his actions demonstrated poor judgment and failure to maintain mission focus. Jackson would receive formal reprimand, loss of rank, loss of pay, official mark on his service record. Commander asked if Jackson had anything to say. Jackson said he would make the same choice again. During these weeks, Jackson noticed something strange about Frost. The cat would sit and stare at Jackson for long periods. Not typical cat behavior. Something more intense, more focused, like Frost was studying him. Other soldiers noticed too. One ranger told Jackson it was unsettling, said the cat looked like he was analyzing him. Another behavior emerged. Frost would wake up at night and walk over to Jackson while he slept, would place one paw on Jackson's chest, right over his heart, would sit like that for minutes, completely still, eyes closed. April 2014. Jackson completed his deployment. Frost was cleared for transport. The kitten that should have died on a frozen mountain was going to Colorado. Jackson flew home with Frost in an approved carrier. Customs cleared them without issues. Jackson called his wife Sarah from the airport, told her he was home, told her he was bringing someone. Sarah thought he meant another soldier. Jackson said no. He brought a cat. Long pause. Then Sarah asked if he was serious. Jackson said very serious. Sarah Rivera was 24 years old, teaching 4th grade outside Fort Carson. She had married Jackson 3 years earlier, right before his first deployment. She knew military life. New deployments meant months of worry. She prepared for that. She did not prepare for a combat rescue cat. When Jackson walked through their door carrying a cat carrier, Sarah stared. Jackson opened it. Frost walked out, looked around with complete confidence, then walked directly to Sarah and rubbed against her legs. Sarah knelt down. Frost climbed into her lap immediately, started purring. Sarah listened to Jackson's story without interrupting. When he finished, she asked one question. Was it worth it? Worth losing rank? Worth the reprimand? Jackson looked at Frost in Sarah's arms and said yes. Sarah nodded, then said okay. If it was worth it to Jackson, it was worth it to her. Frost became family that day. Frost adapted to domestic life easily. Most combat rescues need months to adjust. Frost showed none of that. He explored thoroughly on day one, claimed the couch as his territory. But those unusual behaviors continued. The staring, the paw on chest while Jackson slept. New behaviors emerged. Frost would follow Sarah constantly, not playfully, more like guarding. If Sarah sat down, Frost sat next to her. If Sarah moved rooms, Frost followed within seconds. Jackson joked that Frost had chosen Sarah as his primary human. Sarah said it felt less like affection and more like supervision. 1 year after bringing Frost home, Jackson received orders for another deployment, Africa, counterterrorism advisory role. Sarah took the news quietly. Jackson worried about leaving her alone again. Sarah reminded him she had Frost. They both laughed. Jackson deployed in October 2015. Sarah settled into familiar routine. Frost's behavior shifted immediately. The cat became even more attached, would not let Sarah out of his sight. 3 months into deployment, something changed. Frost started behaving strangely at night. would wake Sarah by patting her face with his paw. This happened multiple times per week. Sarah mentioned it to her mother. Her mother said cats are weird. Sarah agreed but said this felt different, more purposeful. The behavior escalated. Frost started focusing his attention on one specific area, Sarah's abdomen, left side, just below her rib cage. He would sniff that spot obsessively. December 2015. Sarah woke up at 3 in the morning to find Frost sitting on her chest, but this time he was pressing both front paws against that spot on her left side, pressing hard enough that it hurt. Sarah was about to lock him out when something made her stop. The look in Frost's eyes, not playful, not affectionate, desperate, like he was screaming at her through the only means he had. Sarah sat up, turned on the light, looked at Frost, asked out loud what he was trying to tell her. The next morning, Sarah called her doctor. She felt ridiculous explaining it, said her cat kept pawing at one spot on her abdomen and she wanted to get it checked. The receptionist tried not to sound amused, scheduled Sarah for the following week. Sarah thanked her and hung up. Felt stupid, but she kept the appointment. Jackson called that evening. Sarah told him about Frost's behavior. Jackson said to take Frost seriously. That cat survived impossible circumstances. Maybe he knew things humans did not. The doctor appointment was routine. Physical examination. Questions about symptoms. Sarah explained she had no symptoms, no pain, nothing. She only came because her cat kept focusing on one area. The doctor smiled politely, said they would run standard tests. Blood work. Physical exam showed nothing remarkable. Doctor said everything looked normal, but they would call if lab work showed anything. Sarah thanked her and left. Felt validated that nothing was wrong, but also felt relieved. Frost did not stop. If anything, he became more insistent. 2 weeks after her appointment, Sarah received a call. The doctor wanted her to come back in. Something in her blood work. Not urgent, but worth discussing. Sarah felt her stomach drop. She asked what it was. Doctor said they would discuss in person. Sarah scheduled for the next day. That night, Frost slept with both paws pressed against her left side. Sarah let him. She was scared now. She called Jackson, told him about the callback. Jackson said he was sure it was nothing. Neither of them believed it. The follow-up appointment changed everything. The doctor pulled up Sarah's lab results on a computer screen, pointed to specific numbers, said her cancer marker levels were elevated. Sarah asked what that meant. Doctor explained these are tumor markers. Elevated levels can indicate pancreatic issues, can indicate cancer, but also can indicate nothing. Doctor wanted to run more tests, imaging, scan. Sarah asked how elevated. Doctor said significantly elevated, high enough that ignoring it would be irresponsible. Sarah felt the room tilt. Sarah called Jackson immediately after leaving the office, tried to keep her voice steady, told him what the doctor said. Jackson went silent for a long moment, then asked if she was scared. Sarah said yes. Jackson said he was applying for emergency leave. Sarah told him to wait until they knew something definite. Jackson said he did not care about definite. He cared about being there. Those 3 days before the scan were the longest of Sarah's life. She went to work, taught her students. Inside she was spiraling. The scan took 20 minutes. The technician said the radiologist would review images and her doctor would call with results. Within 48 hours, Sarah went home. Frost was waiting by the door like always. Sarah picked him up, held him close, said thank you. Frost purred against her chest. Sarah felt tears she had been holding back finally break through. The call came 36 hours later. Doctor said they found something. A mass on Sarah's pancreas, small, approximately 2 centimeters, located on the tail of the pancreas, left side. The location Frost had been obsessively pawing. Doctor said they needed biopsy to confirm, but imaging suggested malignancy. Doctor was referring Sarah to an oncologist immediately. Surgery would likely be required. Sarah just said okay and hung up. Then she sat on her couch and stared at nothing for an hour. Jackson was granted emergency leave within 24 hours. He arrived home 2 days later, walked through the door and Sarah fell apart. She had been holding it together. but seeing Jackson broke whatever wall she had built. Jackson held her. After a long time, Sarah told him about Frost, about months of the cat focusing on that exact spot. Jackson looked at Frost and said that cat saved her life. Sarah met with an oncologist 3 days later. Doctor reviewed all imaging and lab work, confirmed pancreatic adenocarcinoma, stage 1, caught incredibly early, almost impossibly early. Doctor said pancreatic cancer at this stage usually produces no symptoms, most cases not found until stage 3 or 4 when symptoms finally appear. Doctor asked how Sarah knew to get tested. Sarah explained about her cat. The oncologist stared at her for a moment, then said whatever the reason, Sarah was extraordinarily lucky. Pancreatic cancer is one of the deadliest precisely because it is almost always caught late. Catching it at stage 1 changed everything. The oncologist explained treatment options. Surgery was necessary. A distal pancreatectomy. Remove the tail of the pancreas where the tumor was located. Recovery would take months. There might be complications, but survival rate for stage 1 pancreatic cancer treated with surgery was over 90%. Doctor said if Sarah had waited even 6 months, prognosis would be drastically different. Survival rates would drop to below 50%. Doctor said again that Sarah was lucky. Sarah corrected her, said she was not lucky. She had a cat that refused to let her ignore what was happening. Surgery was scheduled for January 2016. Jackson took leave to be there. Sarah's mother flew in from Ohio. The night before surgery, Sarah could not sleep. Jackson lay next to her, also not sleeping. They talked quietly about normal future things that assumed Sarah would be alive to do them. Frost lay between them, purring. At some point, Jackson said maybe rescuing Frost on that mountain was not about saving the cat. Maybe it was about the cat being in position to save Sarah 9 years later. Sarah said she did not believe in that kind of destiny. Jackson said he did not either, but he could not explain any other way. The surgery took 6 hours. Oncologist removed the tail of Sarah's pancreas, the spleen, and surrounding lymph nodes. Pathology confirmed the cancer had not spread beyond the primary tumor. All margins were clear. Surgery was successful. Sarah woke up in recovery with Jackson holding her hand. First thing she asked was if Frost was okay. Jackson laughed and said yes, Frost was fine. Sarah smiled, said Frost saved her life. Recovery was brutal. Sarah spent a week in hospital. Pain management was difficult. She developed post-surgical infection requiring additional antibiotics. She lost 15 pounds in 2 weeks. Jackson stayed with her constantly. Sarah's mother managed everything at home, including Frost, who apparently sat by the front door for the entire week Sarah was gone. Refused to eat, refused to move, just waited. When Sarah finally came home, Frost walked up to her slowly, sniffed her carefully, then climbed gently into her lap and started purring. Over the next 6 months, Sarah recovered. Slowly, painfully, but steadily. She returned to teaching part-time by March, full-time by May. Her oncologist monitored her closely. Blood work every month, scans every 3 months. Everything remained clear. No recurrence, no spread. Doctor said at the 1-year mark, if everything still looked good, Sarah would officially be in remission. Jackson completed his deployment and returned home permanently in June. They started planning the future, normal life things, but something changed in their relationship. There was distance, small but present. Jackson had become hyper-aware of Sarah's health, would ask multiple times daily how she felt, would watch her eat, would check on her at night. Sarah appreciated the concern, but it also felt suffocating. She was not fragile. She had survived cancer and surgery. She was strong, but Jackson could not see her that way anymore. Sarah started noticing other things too. Jackson drank more than he used to, not alcoholic levels, but more than before. A beer with dinner became 2 beers, became 3. She also noticed Jackson had become obsessed with Frost, would talk about how Frost saved Sarah like it was a miracle, would credit Frost with Sarah being alive. Sarah found it uncomfortable. She was grateful to Frost, but Jackson was turning the cat into something almost religious. Sarah tried to ground those conversations. reminded Jackson that cats have keen senses, that Frost probably smelled something chemical changing in her body, that it was biology, not magic. Their first year after surgery was complicated. They were happy she survived. They were grateful for early detection. They were trying to rebuild normalcy. But both of them were different now. Sarah had looked at mortality directly. Jackson had almost lost his wife. Neither of them knew how to process that completely. They went to couples counseling. It helped some, helped them communicate better. But underneath the progress, something remained unresolved. 2 years passed. Sarah remained cancer-free. Jackson left the military. Transitioning to civilian life proved harder than expected. He struggled finding employment that felt meaningful. Tried construction. Tried security work. Hated both. Felt purposeless without military structure. Sarah was dealing with her own struggles. Teaching had become emotionally exhausting. The cancer had taken something from her, some reserve of energy she used to have. Now it was finite. She came home depleted every day. Frost watched all this. The cat was 5 years old now, still healthy, still vigilant, but his focus had shifted. He divided attention equally between Jackson and Sarah, would check on both multiple times daily, would sleep between them at night, would meow if either isolated too long. In June 2018, Sarah came home from work and found Jackson sitting in the dark, Frost in his lap. Jackson was crying. Sarah asked if he was okay. Jackson said no. He was not okay. He needed help, real help. They started intensive therapy, individual and couples. Jackson was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and depression. Started medication. Started processing his combat experiences properly for first time. Addressed his feelings about the reprimand, about leaving military, about Sarah's cancer, about his sense of lost purpose. Sarah worked through her own trauma, the cancer, the fear, the exhaustion. Therapy was brutal, brought up things they had buried, but slowly it helped. Jackson found work with a veteran services organization, helping other veterans transition. It gave him purpose. By their 5-year cancer screening, Sarah remained in complete remission. Doctors said she could start spacing out scans, move from every 6 months to annually. Sarah was likely cured. The word cured felt dangerous to say out loud, but her doctor used it. They decided to do something meaningful. Contacted the military animal rescue organization that helped bring Frost to America. Asked how they could support it. The organization said they could volunteer, could foster animals transitioning from combat zones. Jackson and Sarah did all three. They started fostering cats rescued from Iraq and Afghanistan, helped them adjust to domestic life before permanent adoption. It was hard work. Many animals were traumatized. Over 2 years they fostered 17 cats, found permanent homes for 16, kept one. A black and white tuxedo cat from Kabul injured by shrapnel, missing part of left ear, nervous around loud noises, needed more time than most adopters could provide. They named him Scout. Frost accepted Scout immediately, took him under supervision like an older brother. Scout slowly relaxed, became part of the family. Then something happened that would test everything they had learned about trusting animals. 3 weeks after they brought Scout home, Sarah woke up with the young cat sitting on her chest, staring at her, one paw raised and pressed gently against her left side. Same spot where Frost had focused before her cancer diagnosis. Sarah's blood went cold. She told herself she was being paranoid. Scout was new, adjusting. This did not mean anything, but she could not shake the fear. She told Jackson. He looked sick, said Sarah should get checked. The appointment was routine. Physical exam, blood work, imaging, everything came back normal. Doctor said Sarah was fine. Probably would not need another scan for 2 years. Sarah felt relieved and stupid. Scout was not Frost, was not detecting cancer, was just being a weird new cat. But Scout did not stop the behavior. He continued focusing on Sarah's left side, pawing at it, sniffing it. Jackson watched this pattern repeat and felt uneasy. He suggested Sarah get a second opinion. Different doctor, more comprehensive screening. Sarah resisted, said she just had full workup. Everything was fine. Jackson said Frost was never wrong. Maybe Scout learned something from him. Sarah said she was not going through medical anxiety again because of a cat. They argued. The argument ended differently this time. Sarah agreed to get screened again, but she also told Jackson they needed boundaries. They could not live their entire lives reacting to cat behavior. At some point they had to trust they were okay. Jackson agreed intellectually, but emotionally he could not shake the feeling Scout was trying to tell them something. They scheduled appointment with Sarah's oncologist, explained the situation. The oncologist was skeptical but agreed to run tests, ordered more sensitive imaging, tumor markers, full panel. Results would take a week. That week was tense. Sarah and Jackson barely talked, both stuck in their own fear spirals. Scout continued his vigilance over Sarah. She let him, stopped pushing him away. If he was trying to warn her, she needed to listen. Frost had been right. The oncologist called 8 days later, asked Sarah to come in. Sarah felt her world tilt. The oncologist pulled up Sarah's recent scans, compared them to scans from 3 weeks earlier, pointed to something Sarah could barely see, a tiny shadow, left side of her abdomen, different location from her first cancer, but definitely there, not present on earlier scan, or maybe too small to detect then. Oncologist said it could be nothing, could be scar tissue, could be benign growth, but given Sarah's history, they needed to biopsy. Sarah asked how this was possible. She had been clear for over 6 years. Oncologist said second primary cancers happen in survivors. Sarah was higher risk because she had already had cancer once. The biopsy happened 3 days later. Results took a week. Came back positive, adenocarcinoma, likely gastrointestinal in origin. Stage 1. Caught incredibly early again, possibly too early for symptoms to manifest for months. Oncologist said Sarah was extraordinarily fortunate. Second cancers are usually caught later. Early detection changed her prognosis dramatically. Treatment would be surgery followed by preventative chemotherapy. Survival rate was over 80%. Doctor asked again how Sarah knew to get tested. Sarah told her about Scout. Sarah started treatment in December 2023. Surgery first. Removed portion of her colon where tumor was located. Recovery was difficult, but not as brutal as her first surgery. Her body remembered this. Chemotherapy started in February 2024. Less aggressive protocol, but still exhausting. Jackson took leave to care for her. Scout stayed close to Sarah through all of it. Would sleep on her lap during treatment. Would purr constantly. Jackson watched Scout care for Sarah and felt overwhelming gratitude. Sarah completed treatment in June 2024. Scans showed no evidence of disease. Complete remission. Her second complete remission. She should have been relieved. Instead, she felt numb. How many times could she survive cancer? Jackson tried to be optimistic. Sarah said she was grateful, but she was also exhausted, tired of fighting, tired of fear. They went back to therapy, worked through Sarah's complicated feelings about survivorship. Therapy helped but could not fix the fundamental problem. Sarah had cancer twice, might get it again. They would spend rest of their lives waiting for next diagnosis. That was their reality now. They had to find a way to live with that. Had to find meaning beyond survival. In August 2024, they made a significant decision. They sold their house, used the money to start a non-profit organization. Called it Frost's Legacy. Mission was threefold. Support combat animal rescue. Fund early cancer screening for uninsured veterans and military families. Provide grants for animal-assisted therapy research specifically focused on animal disease detection. It gave them purpose that extended beyond their own survival. They recruited board members, filed paperwork, launched fundraising. The organization grew faster than expected. The organization's first major initiative was partnering with veterinary schools to study animal disease detection. They funded research grants, connected scientists with animal behaviorists, facilitated studies that tracked animals who exhibited unusual behavior before their owners were diagnosed with cancer. The research was preliminary, nothing conclusive yet, but patterns were emerging. Dogs and cats both showed behavior changes months before diagnosis. Chemical detection seemed likely. animals smelling metabolic changes in human bodies. Jackson and Sarah followed the research closely. Scout continued to thrive. At 4 years old, he was healthy and confident. Nothing like the traumatized cat they had fostered 3 years earlier. He and Sarah had bonded intensely during her treatment. She was his human now. He followed her everywhere, slept pressed against her every night. Jackson joked that he was jealous. Sarah said good. She had earned Scout's devotion by surviving twice. Scout had earned her complete trust by warning her. They were bonded in ways that transcended normal relationships. Scout had saved her life. Frost turned 9 years old in February 2023. He was slowing down, sleeping more, playing less. Jackson and Sarah knew what was coming eventually, but tried not to think about it. Frost had given them so much, had saved Sarah, had held their family together. The idea of losing him felt unbearable. They spoiled him shamelessly. Best food, warmest sleeping spots, constant affection. Scout followed Frost everywhere, seemed to understand that his mentor was aging, would groom Frost gently, would share his food. In April 2023, Sarah noticed Frost was not eating well. He would sniff food and walk away. This continued for several days. Jackson and Sarah took him to the veterinarian. Blood work showed kidney values were elevated. Not catastrophic, but concerning. Veterinarians said kidney disease was common in older cats. They could manage it with diet and medication. Might buy him months or years. Jackson and Sarah started the treatment protocol. Frost tolerated it but clearly did not enjoy it. Pills twice daily. Special food. He bore it with patience, but his eyes seemed tired. Frost stabilized over the summer. Kidney values improved slightly. He started eating better, playing occasionally with Scout. Jackson and Sarah allowed themselves to hope this was just a bump, that Frost had more time. But in September, Frost stopped eating again. This time medication did not help. Veterinarian ran more tests. Kidney disease had progressed. Frost was in chronic renal failure. Treatment options were limited. They could try more aggressive intervention, but quality of life would be poor. Veterinarian said gently that sometimes letting go was the kindest option. Jackson and Sarah were not ready to hear that. They took Frost home, tried everything, hand feeding, different foods, anything to get him to eat. Frost would take a few bites to please them, then stop. He was done fighting. He had fought for 9 years. He was ready to rest. The decision to euthanize was the hardest thing Jackson and Sarah had ever done. Harder than their own cancer diagnoses. Harder than chemotherapy. Frost had saved Sarah, and now they had to decide when his life ended. It felt wrong, but watching him suffer felt worse. They scheduled the appointment for October 5th, 2023. In home euthanasia, the veterinarian would come to them. Frost could be comfortable, surrounded by family. Jackson took the week off work. Sarah called in sick. They spent Frost's final days doing nothing but being with him, holding him, telling him thank you, telling him he was the best cat, telling him they loved him, telling him it was okay to let go. Scout seemed to understand, would groom Frost constantly. The veterinarian arrived at 10 in the morning on October 5th. Jackson and Sarah held Frost together on the couch. Scout sat nearby watching. The veterinarian explained the process. 2 injections. First would sedate him. Second would stop his heart. It would be peaceful, quick. Frost would not suffer. Jackson and Sarah nodded. Could not speak. The veterinarian administered the first injection. Frost relaxed immediately. His breathing slowed. His eyes started to close. Jackson and Sarah held him close, whispered thank you over and over. The veterinarian waited, then administered the second injection. Frost took 3 more breaths, then stopped. The veterinarian checked for heartbeat, confirmed he was gone, offered condolences, left them alone with his body. Jackson and Sarah sat holding Frost's body for over an hour, could not make themselves let go. This cat had changed everything, had saved Sarah, and now he was gone. Scout approached slowly, sniffed Frost, meowed quietly, then walked away to the window. Jackson finally said they needed to bury him. Sarah nodded. They had chosen a spot in their backyard under a tree Frost liked. Jackson dug the grave. Sarah prepared Frost's body, wrapped him in his favorite blanket. They buried him together as the sun set, placed a marker, planted flowers, sat by the grave until dark. Scout came outside and sat with them, the three of them grieving together. The weeks after Frost died were unexpectedly difficult. Jackson and Sarah had prepared for grief, but they had not prepared for the emptiness. Frost had been the center of their family for 9 years. His absence was enormous. Scout was clearly depressed, would search the apartment looking for Frost, would meow plaintively, would not eat well. Jackson and Sarah tried to comfort him, but they were barely functioning themselves. Grief was physical, made everything hurt. They leaned on each other, talked about Frost constantly, shared memories, cried together. It helped, slowly, but it helped. By the end of 2024, Frost's legacy had raised over $300,000. They funded 12 combat animal rescues, provided cancer screening grants to 47 military families, supported 3 major research studies on animal disease detection. The work was meaningful in ways their previous careers had never been. Jackson and Sarah were building something that would outlast them, something that honored Frost's impossible life and extraordinary death. They spoke at fundraisers, shared their story repeatedly, never got tired of telling people about the cat who survived a frozen mountain and saved a life 9 years later. Some people were skeptical, thought they were exaggerating. Jackson and Sarah did not argue, just shared the medical records, the timeline, the documentation, let people draw their own conclusions. In March 2025, they received a letter that changed their perspective on everything that had happened. The letter was from a woman in Oregon named Michelle Torres. She had read about their story online, had a similar experience. Her dog had detected her husband's brain tumor 6 months before he had any symptoms. Dog kept pawing at the left side of his head, whining, refusing to leave him alone. They finally got it checked, found a tumor, early stage, treatable. Her husband survived because they took their dog's behavior seriously. Michelle wanted to thank Jackson and Sarah, said their story had given her framework to understand what her dog had done. The letter triggered something in Sarah. She realized they were not unique. Frost and Scout were not supernatural. They were part of a larger pattern that humans had mostly ignored or dismissed. Animals had been detecting diseases for as long as animals and humans had lived together. But modern medicine had trained people to trust technology over instinct, trust scans over intuition. Sarah and Jackson had been fortunate. They had trusted their animals despite cultural conditioning telling them not to. How many people had lost that gamble? How many people had ignored animal warnings and died because of it? They expanded Frost's legacy mission, added education component, started going to schools, teaching children to pay attention to animal behavior, teaching them that animals are not just pets, but partners who notice things humans miss, teaching them that early detection saves lives and animals can be part of that detection. Kids responded powerfully. They had not yet learned to dismiss animal intelligence, had not yet built the skepticism adults carry. They believed animals could do extraordinary things. Sarah and Jackson nurtured that belief. Jackson turned 45 in June 2025. Sarah turned 43 in September. They were middle-aged, alive, healthy, together, raising awareness about animal disease detection, building organization that saved lives. They had survived impossible circumstances, had been saved by cats who should not have been able to save them, had turned that survival into meaning, into purpose, into contribution. That was their legacy, not just survival but transformation, taking trauma and building something beautiful from it. They never forgot that everything started with one decision on a frozen mountain. Jackson choosing to save a kitten instead of following orders, getting punished for it, bringing Frost home anyway. That single choice created cascade of consequences that saved a life, built an organization, advanced medical research, and changed their understanding of what animals could do. Jackson sometimes wondered what would have happened if he had followed orders that day. If he had left Frost on that mountain, Sarah would probably be dead. Frost's legacy would not exist. Scout continued to thrive through 2025, still healthy, still alert, still vigilant in his quiet way. He had earned permanent place in their family, had earned his rest. Whatever years he had left would be peaceful, comfortable, filled with affection and gratitude. Jackson and Sarah made sure of that. Every day, Scout had saved Sarah. They would spend his remaining life making sure he knew how much he mattered, how grateful they were. Looking back across 11 years, Jackson and Sarah could see pattern they had not noticed while living it. Frost surviving impossible cold, detecting Sarah's cancer, dying peacefully knowing he had fulfilled some purpose they could not name. Scout arriving traumatized and learning from Frost, detecting Sarah's second cancer, continuing Frost's legacy. All of it connected, all of it meaningful, not destiny, not divine intervention, just biology and compassion intersecting in ways that created outcome none of them could have predicted. In November 2025, they received news that one of their research partners had published breakthrough study. Study confirmed that cats could detect pancreatic cancer from skin samples with 92% accuracy, higher than most medical screening tests. The study was peer-reviewed, published in major medical journal, cited Jackson and Sarah's case as initial inspiration. The study concluded that animal disease detection was viable, measurable, and worthy of serious medical integration. Jackson and Sarah read the publication together, cried together. 11 years of survival and advocacy had contributed to legitimate medical advancement. They decided to write a book, not memoir, practical guide, how to recognize animal disease detection behaviors, how to advocate for yourself with doctors when animal behavior suggests illness, how to support research, how to integrate animal awareness into health monitoring. They wanted to give people tools, wanted to empower people to trust their animals, wanted to reduce deaths from late detection. Writing the book took 18 months. Published in May 2027, became minor bestseller, reached people who were skeptical but open, people who needed evidence and protocols rather than emotional story. The book mattered, saved lives. They received letters from readers who had sought screening because of animal behavior and found early cancers. Each letter was validation, proof that their suffering had produced something beyond survival. By mid-2027, Sarah was 11 years past her first cancer diagnosis. She remained clear. She remained healthy. Her doctors said she could reduce skin frequency, move to every 2 years instead of annually. Sarah was likely cured. That word again, cured, still felt dangerous, but her doctors insisted. Statistically, she had survived, had beaten odds. Frost's legacy celebrated its 5th anniversary in August 2027. They had raised over $1 million, funded 100 animal rescues, provided screening to over 800 military families, supported 12 research studies, trained 30 detection animals, educated 8,000 children. The organization had grown beyond Jackson and Sarah, had board members and staff and volunteers, had life independent of their personal story. That was success, building something that would continue after they were gone, something that honored Frost and Scout and all the animals who had saved human lives. Scout turned 7 in January 2028, still healthy, still the cat who had detected Sarah's second cancer, still living proof that animals could save lives. Jackson and Sarah made sure Scout knew every day how much he mattered, how grateful they were. Scout seemed content, relaxed in ways he had not been when he first arrived traumatized from Kabul. He had found his home, his purpose, his family, and that family would make sure his remaining years were filled with comfort and love. So here is what Jackson and Sarah want you to understand from their impossible story. If your animal starts acting strangely, pay attention. If your dog will not stop sniffing one spot on your body, get it checked. If your cat starts pawing at you obsessively, get it checked. Do not dismiss animal behavior as random or meaningless. Animals perceive things humans miss. Animals detect chemical changes humans cannot smell. Animals know things humans have forgotten how to know. Early detection saves lives. Animals provide early detection. Trust them. Advocate for yourself with doctors even when you feel stupid, even when tests come back normal, even when everyone says you are overreacting. Sarah is alive because she trusted her cats, because she got screened when she had no symptoms, because she took animal behavior seriously. And if you are a cancer survivor reading this, know that you are not alone. Know that survival is complicated. Know that fear never fully goes away but becomes manageable. Know that building meaning from suffering is possible. Know that your story matters. Know that sharing your story might save someone else. Know that animals might be better at detecting recurrence than you are. Know that staying vigilant is exhausting, but necessary. Know that clear scans are victories worth celebrating. Know that you are stronger than you think. Know that you can survive things you thought would destroy you. Know that gratitude and trauma can exist simultaneously. Know that hope is available even in darkness. Jackson and Sarah are still here, still fighting, still surviving, still building, still grateful, still scared sometimes, still alive. Scout is still here, still vigilant, still extraordinary, still just a cat. Frost is gone, but his legacy continues. Through Scout, through Frost's legacy organization, through research his life inspired, through lives saved by people who read their story and trusted their animals, through every early detection, through every survival, through every person who learned to pay attention instead of dismissing. This story does not have neat ending because real life does not work that way. Jackson and Sarah do not know if Sarah will stay cancer-free. Do not know if Scout will detect something else someday. Do not know what comes next, but they know how to face uncertainty now, know how to support each other, know how to find meaning in survival, know how to be grateful for each day they get, know that animals saved Sarah twice, know that sharing their story matters, know that they are alive when they should not be. The research continues, the organization grows, the stories multiply. People across the world are learning to pay attention to their animals, learning to trust behaviors they would have dismissed before, learning that early detection is everything and animals can provide it. Medical schools are starting to take animal disease detection seriously. Veterinary programs are incorporating it into curriculum. Hospitals are exploring pilot programs with trained detection animals. The impossible is becoming possible. The supernatural is becoming scientific. And it all traces back to a frozen kitten on an Afghan mountain and one soldier's choice to save him. Jackson sometimes thinks about that moment on the mountain, that decision to disobey orders, that choice that cost him rank and pay and career advancement. He wonders if some part of him knew, some instinct deeper than logic that told him this mattered, that this kitten was not just a kitten, that saving this life would create ripples he could not predict. He does not believe in destiny, does not believe in divine plans, but he cannot explain the pattern any other way. Sarah sometimes thinks about Frost's eyes, the way he would stare at her with such intensity, the way he tried for months to tell her something was wrong, the patience he showed, the persistence. She wonders what he was experiencing, what chemical signatures he was detecting, what changes in her body smelled wrong to him. She wonders if Frost knew what he was doing, if he understood he was saving her, or if he was just following instinct. Either way, she owes him her life, and she will spend whatever years she has left making sure other people benefit from what Frost taught them. The letters keep coming, people sharing their own stories, dogs who detected their owner's diabetes, cats who detected their owner's heart attacks, birds who detected their owner's strokes, horses who detected their owner's seizures. The anecdotes pile up, the patterns emerge, the evidence builds. Animals are not magic. They are biology operating at levels humans have not fully mapped. They are perception refined through evolution. They are partners who have been trying to tell us things for thousands of years. And finally, slowly, humans are learning to listen. Jackson and Sarah speak at medical conferences now, share their story with doctors and researchers, show the evidence, make the case. Some are receptive, some are skeptical. But more are listening than did 5 years ago. More are willing to consider that animals might provide diagnostic information that technology misses. More are open to integrating animal observation into screening protocols. Progress is slow, but it is happening. And it is happening because one frozen kitten survived the impossible and repaid that survival by saving the life that mattered most. Scout continues his quiet life, sleeps in sunny spots, plays with toys, acts like a normal cat most of the time. But sometimes Jackson and Sarah catch him staring at them with that same intensity. Frost used to have that focused observation, that analytical gaze, and they wonder what he is perceiving, what changes he is tracking, what information he is gathering. They do not fear it anymore. They trust it. If Scout starts acting strange, they will listen. They will get checked. They will catch whatever needs catching early. Frost's legacy continues to grow. By 2028, they have reached their goal of funding 100 combat animal rescues per year. They have provided free cancer screenings to over 1,000 military families. They have supported 20 research studies. They have trained 50 detection animals. They have educated 15,000 children. The impact is measurable, real, meaningful. And it all started because Jackson refused an order on a frozen mountain, because he chose compassion over obedience. If this story has affected you, share it. Help these lessons reach more people. Support animal rescue organizations. Fund cancer research. Advocate for animal disease detection research. Get your regular cancer screenings. Pay attention to your animals. Trust them when they act strange. Take that trust to your doctor even when you feel ridiculous. Early detection saves lives. Animals provide early detection. This is not miracle story. This is biology story. This is attention story. This is compassion story. This is survival story. Jackson found frozen kitten on mountain in Afghanistan 11 years ago. That kitten saved a life, inspired medical research, created organization that helps thousands. All because one soldier chose compassion over orders. All because one cat refused to die on that mountain. All because paying attention matters. All because animals know things. All because early detection saves lives. All because rescue works both ways. All because love is stronger than death. So pay attention to your animals, to your body, to the impossible things happening right in front of you that everyone else dismisses. Pay attention because your life might depend on it, because someone else's life might depend on it, because Frost and Scout proved that animals can save lives if humans learn to listen. That is the story. That is the lesson. That is why this matters. Pay attention. Trust your animals. Get screened early. Survive. Build meaning from survival. Share your story. Help others survive. That is how impossible becomes possible. That is how frozen kittens save lives years later. That is how love defeats death over and over. Jackson and Sarah Rivera are alive today because they paid attention, because they trusted a cat when logic said not to, because they advocated for screening when doctors said everything was fine, because they listened to the impossible and found it was truth. Frost is gone, but his legacy lives in every early detection, in every life saved because someone paid attention to their animal, in every research study that proves what Jackson and Sarah already knew. Animals can save lives. They have been trying to tell us that forever. We just needed to learn how to listen. Sarah will continue getting screened. Scout will continue watching. Jackson will continue advocating. Frost's legacy will continue growing. The research will continue advancing. The lives saved will continue multiplying. And somewhere, on a frozen mountain in Afghanistan, the impossible happened. A kitten survived where nothing should survive, waited for rescue that should never have come, and changed the world in ways no one could have predicted. That is the power of one choice, one moment of compassion, one refusal to look away from suffering, one frozen kitten on a mountain who refused to die, one soldier who refused to leave him, one detection that saved a life, one legacy that continues, one story that proves animals are not just pets. They are partners, guardians, lifesavers, teachers if we only learn to pay attention. So pay attention. Always pay attention. Your life, or the life of someone you love, might depend on it. That is what Frost taught them. That is what Scout continues to teach them. That is what they are teaching the world. Pay attention. Trust your animals. Listen to the impossible. Because sometimes the impossible is the only truth that matters.